Hi, friends. I'm Scott Giles, and welcome to Power Talk, my podcast here on Facebook Live and YouTube. I cover topics related to hypnocoaching, the hypnotic arts and sciences generally, and spirituality. If you'd like to know more about my professional work or sign up for my free newsletter, Power Lines, check out my website, which I'll tag at the end of this video. Today I want to explore a mind game with you. The idea here is just to keep you aware of a possibility that may make you think about the universe and your place in it differently. There is a theory in abstract physics that what we think of as reality isn't. That in fact we're really in a situation like the one described in the 1999 science fiction movie The Matrix, that we're actually living inside a computer simulation that we think is real, but which is actually a computational program running on an immense supercomputer that exists at a base level of reality that we cannot know. Now, this idea is not as crazy as you might think. Strange though it may seem, this idea is actually deeply rooted in Western philosophy. In his masterpiece, The Republic, philosopher Plato talks about the allegory of a cave. It appears in volume 7. The idea is that we are like people living in a cave who are chained so that we cannot turn around. The really important things are going on behind us, but we can't see them. All we can see are their shadows projected on the wall of the cave before us. Because that's all we can see, we think those shadows are reality, but they are not. What is really real, Plato argued, was something called the forms, which cannot be directly perceived. All we perceive is a simulacrum of what that ultimate reality might be like. Similarly, the great German philosopher Immanuel Kant, in his 1781 book, The Critique of Pure Reason, notes that what we perceive as reality is only the result of sense data transmitted to our brain by our nervous system. We have no idea what's really real because all we have is the interpretation of that sense data. When I was a grad student studying philosophy, professors used to ask, how do you know that you're not just a disembodied brain floating in a tank of vitriol with the sense data being given to the brain by implanted wires? And the reality is you can't know that you're not that, even given that, in fact, we now know that human consciousness is not exclusively created by the brain. The gut, the heart, the spinal column all play a role. But still, how do we know that we're not just getting input from outside of ourselves and what we think of as reality is an illusion? Interestingly, animal research shows that Kant's probably correct. Naturalist David Attenborough points out, animals sense a very different universe than we do. He calls the reality that a creature senses as that creature's Umwelt, which is German for environment. And the point is that the world experienced by a particular animal differs one from another. Our human eyes are located in front. So we experience the world as something we're moving into. A bird's eyes are on the side of its head, so it experiences the world as wrapped around it. A mockingbird can see colors that we can't and uses those colors to distinguish male from female. To us, the center of a sunflower looks uniform, but the bee can see an ultraviolet target at the center where the pollen is. The nighthawk moth apparently sees a night full of colors that are invisible to us, while a robin can sense the Earth's magnetic fields and use them to navigate where we can't sense them at all. Creatures do not perceive the world the same. Heck, perhaps there are extraterrestrial aliens living among us. We just lack the sense organs that would allow us to perceive them. So what we think of as real could, in fact, be an illusion. Our Umwelt may be purely virtual. Physicists and philosophers have extended this notion. In his popular podcast, Star Talk, host Neil deGrasse Tyson advances the idea that we may be living in the Matrix. We may be virtual beings in a computer simulation. We may not be living at the base reality at all. We could just be like characters in a computer game, and there would be no way to know except by looking for glitches that might show us that what we think is real isn't, and such glitches may exist. Nick Bostrom of the University of Oxford wrote a foundational paper about this in 2003. He said, if we did have the computer power to create such a simulation, we would certainly do so. Therefore, why can we assume that other more advanced civilizations, and there are uncountable numbers of galaxies out there, so surely there are more advanced civilizations, why would they hesitate to do the same if we wouldn't hesitate? And the beings being simulated would almost certainly not be aware that they were simulations. And the virtual creatures living in such a simulation might themselves advance to the point where they could create simulations of their own. However, as they did that, they would exponentially increase the power demands at the computational computer at the base level, which would now have to handle not just the simulation, but the simulations being run inside of other simulations, and eventually a limit would be encountered and glitches in the matrix would become observable. So we can look for things that seem to contradict other things that are known to be true. And interestingly, there are some candidates. For example, we know that there are 4 fundamental forces in the standard model of the universe described by our physics. They are the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, the electromagnetic force, and the gravitational force. However, no model that includes the first 3 has been able to explain gravity. So far, all of the theories of everything, as they're called, cannot explain gravity in a way that's consistent with the other forces. So maybe there's no explanation. Maybe gravity is simply a given in our simulation that has no explanation other than that's how it was programmed. A team of astrophysicists in Australia and England have uncovered evidence that the laws of physics may be different in different parts of the universe. Measuring using the Very Large Telescope in Chile and the Keck Observatory in Hawaii, and as reported in the Journal of Physical Review Letters, the fine structure constant, a measurement that should be the same throughout the universe, actually appears to vary, and no one knows why. Fascinating stuff, isn't it? Now, the purpose of thinking about something like this is simply to extend your grasp of the possible. The arguments against simulation theory are persuasive, the basic one being Occam's razor, which is always keep your explanations as simple as possible. Simple explanations are usually correct. But that also is itself a theory. However, given it the simulation hypothesis isn't simple, but it does highlight how little we can know about the fundamental nature of reality. And that's just fascinating, isn't it? And so an attitude of intellectual humility is certainly wise. Hey, thank you for your time and attention today. I'll be back next week with another talk on a different subject, and I'd like to invite you to join me. It does help me if you let others know about my videos, so please like, share, and subscribe. And if I can be of help to you, reach out through email, my website, or my Patreon channel. Stay well and stay safe.